I'm pregnant. 2 words that shattered my universe. The doctor, a stoic man with zero bedside manner, simply pushed his glasses up his nose and delivered the final blow. Your partner must be quite the specimen. I stumbled out of the clinic, the sterile white report clutched in my hand like a death sentence for the life I knew. The world collapsed around me as I sank to the curb, the pitying stares of passers-by fading into a dull roar of pure, unadulterated panic. It had only been 2 days. 2 days since I'd had the most explosive, world-ending fight with Sorellen Thorne, screaming every last grievance until my throat was raw. 2 days since I had walked away, vowing to erase him from my existence. And now, I was carrying his child. An alpha, pregnant with another alpha's child. The irony was so cruel it was almost laughable. Our story was never supposed to happen. 2 alphas, by the laws of nature and society, were a combustible, impossible pairing. But Sorellen Thorne wasn't just any alpha. He was a work of art, a cruel joke played by the universe on the rest of us. He possessed a beauty so profound it was almost celestial, with pale skin that seemed to have never seen the sun and eyes the color of a winter storm. But the detail that had undone me, the flaw that made him perfect, was a single, dark mole just beside the curve of his lips. It was a mark of pure temptation, a promise of sin. Ignoring every rational thought and primal instinct screaming at me, I wanted him. Badly. So I pursued him. For half a month, I threw everything I had at him. Witty one-liners, shamelessly direct invitations, even a ridiculously expensive bouquet of black roses. I was Nolan Hayes, confident and proud, used to getting what I wanted. But he was a snow lotus blooming on an unreachable mountain peak, cold and indifferent to my efforts. He met my fire with absolute ice. The first time we truly connected, it wasn't with words, but with fists. We ran into each other outside a bar, and years of suppressed alpha rivalry exploded. We fought like madmen in a back alley, a visceral dance of dominance under the flickering neon lights. It was more humiliating than any rejection he could have given me, because I lost. The world tilted, and the next thing I knew, the rough brick of the alley wall was digging into my back, and Sorellen was pinning me there, his scent of cool mint and sharp blueberry flooding my senses. My grand plan to conquer the beauty ended with the beauty conquering me. But I was patient. I told myself that pursuing a masterpiece required sacrifice. You don't catch a whale by saving the bait. After that fight, something shifted. Sorellen stopped ignoring me. He even started treating me with a strange sort of kindness, a possessive warmth that was as intoxicating as it was confusing. We fell into a volatile, passionate affair that defied all logic. The problem was, the power dynamic set in that alley never changed. No matter how hard I tried, how cunningly I planned, I was always the one being pinned down. My original goal, to dominate him, to be the one in control, was a distant, mocking dream. After the nth time of failing to turn the tables, I finally snapped. That was the fight from 2 days ago. You're a damned tyrant, Sorellen. I had yelled, my voice shaking with frustration. I've swallowed my pride, my honor, everything. I've let you top me countless times. Would it kill you to let me have it just once? He stood before me, arms crossed, a contemptuous smirk playing on his lips. That damned mole seemed to mock me. Did I force you, Nolan? Who was the one who clung to me like a starving stray? Who tried to take advantage of me when I was drunk, pretending it was a moment of weakness? You knew exactly what you were getting into. You reap what you sow, don't play the victim. It's pathetic. Every word was a perfectly aimed dagger. I'm an alpha too. I shot back, my last line of defense. Am I supposed to be on the bottom forever? He didn't answer. He just turned his back on me, a gesture of dismissal more painful than any insult. Sorellen, you bastard. Fine. I seethed, my teeth grinding. If you walk out that door today, we are strangers. I'm done with you. At least then I won't have to be pinned down by you anymore. His hand, resting on the doorknob, paused for a fraction of a second. He glanced over his shoulder, his voice as cold as the grave. As you wish. The door slammed shut, his figure disappearing without a hint of reluctance. That same day, I blocked him on everything, determined to reclaim my life as a normal alpha. But what normal alpha gets pregnant with his rival's child? Now, sitting on this cold pavement, I knew my pride was in ashes. My future was a terrifying question mark. And despite everything, despite the venom we'd spat at each other, I had no choice but to go back to him. My pride was in ashes, but a primal, terrifying survival instinct was screaming. I couldn't tell my parents. They were traditional, proud people who already viewed my volatile association with Sorellen Thorne with deep suspicion. Explaining that their alpha son was pregnant by another alpha would likely send my father into cardiac arrest. There was only one person in the world who shared this catastrophe with me. Gritting my teeth, I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling with a mixture of rage and humiliation. I navigated to Sorellen's blocked contact. The action of unblocking him felt like a physical surrender, a white flag raised over the smoking battlefield of my ego. I typed out a simple, stark message: "We need to talk." The digital slap in the face was immediate. A bright red exclamation mark appeared next to my text. Message failed to send. My blood ran cold. He had blocked me, too. Of course, he had. He had walked out that door and severed the connection just as decisively as I had. The finality of it hit me harder than the slammed door had. All my digital bridges were burned. There was no easy way back. So, I did the one thing I swore I would never do again. I went looking for him. I became a common stalker, hiding in the architectural shadows of the glass and steel monolith that was Thorne Industries. I knew his routine. He always left at precisely 6:30, always walked the 3 blocks to the private garage where he kept his car. I stood across the street, collar pulled up against the crisp evening air, feeling like a fool. At 6:31 p.m., he emerged. He was the very picture of effortless power, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair catching the last rays of the setting sun. He moved with a languid grace that belied the predator underneath. He didn't see me. He walked right past, his scent, that infuriatingly addictive mix of cool mint and sharp blueberry, trailing in his wake. Sorellen. Wait. My voice came out rougher than I intended. He stopped but didn't turn around immediately. The tension in his shoulders was palpable. When he finally glanced at me over his shoulder, his eyes were glacial. Nolan. I believe you made your position quite clear. You never wanted to see me again. You didn't want to be under me anymore. So why are you here? Each word was a deliberate twist of the knife, reminding me of my own angry ultimatum. I swallowed the lump of pride in my throat. I'm here because something serious has happened. He finally turned to face me fully, a look of profound, mocking disbelief on his beautiful face. Oh, let me guess. You've concocted a new, elaborate scheme to get my attention. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous murmur. What is it this time? A forgotten birthday? A fabricated emergency? You know, your theatrics are becoming predictable. He thought this was a game. Another one of my desperate ploys. The injustice of it burned through my fear. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. This isn't a scheme. He raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, the picture of bored indulgence. Then what is it? Spit it out. I don't have all night. Seeing him about to turn away, the words burst from me, raw and unfiltered. I'm pregnant. For a full second, there was absolute silence. The bustling city streets seemed to fade away. Then, Sorellen threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't a sound of joy but of pure, cutting derision. Pregnant, he scoffed, wiping an imaginary tear from his eye. Of all the pathetic lies, Nolan, this is your masterpiece. Using a non-existent child to try and trap me? How low can you sink? It's not a lie. I hissed, my voice cracking. The sheer absurdity of his accusation, of him thinking I would choose this humiliation, made me see red. Do you think I'd invent this nightmare? It's your damn child. Sorellen's expression hardened, his amusement evaporating into cold fury. He looked at me as if I were a ghost, a spectre spouting nonsense. The corner of his mouth twitched. Don't tell me a beta like you is actually pregnant. I'm not a beta, I snapped, though in that moment, my own body felt alien. And yes, I am. I know it sounds insane, but it's the truth. Silence. He just stared, his eyes searching my face for any sign of deception. Knowing words were useless, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the folded medical report. My hand was shaking so badly the paper rattled. Here, I said, my voice flat and dead. This is the proof. If you don't believe this, then there's nothing more I can do. But either way, this has happened. We need to figure out what to do. He didn't move to take it. His gaze was fixed on the stark, clinical header of the document. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. After a long, agonizing moment, he slowly reached out and took the paper from my hand. He unfolded it. His stormy grey eyes scanned the lines of text, his arrogant smirk finally, completely, vanishing. His face went pale, a stark contrast to the dark mole by his lips. He read it once. Then he read it again. The world held its breath as he just stood there, staring at the unbelievable truth written in cold, black ink. Sorellen Thorne, the man who was never rattled, the alpha who met every crisis with a cool, calculating disdain, was utterly frozen. He stared at the report as if trying to decipher an ancient, impossible text. The arrogant facade had crumbled, leaving behind something raw and exposed. The silence stretched on, thick with the unsaid, punctuated only by the distant wail of a siren. Finally, he let out a short, sharp exhale, almost a hiss of disbelief. He looked up from the paper, his eyes finally meeting mine, and for the first time, I saw not contempt or mockery, but a flicker of genuine shock. Maybe even fear. "Have you told your parents?" he asked, his voice a low rasp. "No," I admitted, my gaze dropping to the pavement. "Not yet." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a gesture of pure frustration. "Getting involved with you was 8 lifetimes of bad luck rolled into one," he muttered, more to himself than to me. He began pacing, a caged predator suddenly faced with an unsolvable problem. Then he stopped and pinned me with a look of grim resolution. "Go home. Tell them." He turned to leave. "Wait." I was stunned, my mind struggling to catch up. Wait for what? Sorellen was already several feet away, his back to me. He didn't turn around, his voice carrying back on the evening air, clipped and decisive. For me to come and propose. My brain short-circuited. Propose. Was this some kind of cruel, elaborate joke? Was he actually going to take responsibility? Was he suggesting I go through with this, that I actually have this baby? The idea was so monumentally insane I couldn't wrap my head around it. Wait. I yelled again, jogging to catch up with him. We don't have to. I mean, we could just. An abortion is an option. The words felt foul in my mouth, but in the chaos of my mind, it seemed like the only logical escape route. Sorellen stopped dead in his tracks. He turned around slowly, and this time, the look on his face was something I had never seen before. It was a strange mix of disbelief and something that looked dangerously like amusement. He actually laughed, a low, incredulous chuckle. "Nolan Hayes," he said, shaking his head as if marveling at a scientific anomaly. "I have never in my life met someone as irresponsible as you." And with that parting shot, he turned, straightened his suit jacket, and walked away with a calm, unhurried stride, leaving me standing on the sidewalk like a statue. I was completely dumbfounded. What just happened? Did he just call me irresponsible? The absolute nerve of him. Damn it all, meeting him was my 8 lifetimes of bad luck, not the other way around. That evening, dinner at my parents' house was a silent, agonizing affair. I watched my mother and father, their faces etched with the familiar lines of a long, comfortable life together. They looked so normal, so blissfully unaware that their world was about to be upended. I picked at my food, my stomach churning. My mother, ever observant, placed a piece of braised pork rib on my plate. It was my favorite. The rich, savory aroma hit me, and my stomach revolted instantly. A wave of nausea so powerful it made me gag washed over me. I quickly moved the rib from my plate to hers. Her brow furrowed. "What's wrong? You love these." I can't stomach it," I mumbled. Her eyes narrowed, her maternal sixth sense on high alert. Her gaze swept over me, analytical and sharp. My state today was clearly abnormal, inexplicably so. "That's not right. You're not feeling well," she pressed, her voice laced with concern. My father looked up from his newspaper, his attention captured. The spotlight was on me. I sighed. There was no escaping this. I might as well rip the bandage off. I put down my chopsticks. "Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. But you have to promise you won't get angry." They both stared at me, their expressions shifting from concern to apprehension. I took a deep, shaky breath, summoning every ounce of courage I possessed. "I'm pregnant." The dining room fell into a silence so profound I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. My mother looked like she'd been turned to stone. My father's jaw had gone slack. After what felt like an eternity, my mother finally managed to speak, her voice a strained whisper. Did you get someone pregnant, or did someone get you pregnant? I had to repeat it, the words feeling even more alien the second time. I am pregnant. My mother looked like she was choking. She couldn't process the information. She stammered, Are you sure? This isn't some kind of joke, Nolan. You're an alpha. I nodded, my own voice barely audible. I'm sure. Absolutely, 100% sure. My father was speechless. They sat there, stunned, for a long time. Finally, my mother found her voice again. Whose child is it? I answered softly, the name feeling heavy on my tongue. Sorellen Thorne. My parents' heads snapped towards each other, their eyes wide with shared disbelief. To make matters worse, my father and Sorellen's father were old colleagues. They knew the Thornes. This connection just added another layer of catastrophic absurdity to the situation. My mother let out a long, heavy sigh. Does he know? What does he plan to do? I rubbed the bridge of my nose, trying to appear calm. He knows. He said he's coming to propose. I watched as their minds collectively blue-screened. They looked as though they were still convinced they were trapped in a bizarre dream. What followed was a grueling interrogation about how Sorellen and I had become entangled, and I confessed everything, the fights, the passion, the rivalry. In the end, they had only one verdict for me. You deserve it. I wanted to cry, but no tears would come. The next day, just as he promised, Sorellen Thorne arrived at our doorstep. He wasn't alone. His mother, a woman of intimidating elegance, was with him. Sorellen himself was dressed in a sharp, formal suit, looking infuriatingly handsome and composed. I hid in the dining room, eavesdropping as our parents made excruciatingly polite small talk in the living room. The conversation eventually drifted to the matter at hand. They spoke of our family's long-standing acquaintance, our similar backgrounds. They framed our impossible situation as some kind of fated, cosmic union. The conclusion was swift. A wedding had to be arranged as soon as possible, before my condition became obvious. I was sipping a glass of water, trying to process the surreal turn my life had taken, when Sorellen's voice cut through the air, smooth as silk. Darling, come over here. I choked on my water. Darling? Since when? I looked up and saw him smiling at me, a perfect, polished, utterly fake smile. Oh, I saw what he was doing. He was putting on a show for our parents. Well, two could play at that game. I set my glass down, forcing my lips into an equally saccharine smile. Of course, Sorellen, honey, I'm coming. The smile on Sorellen Thorne's face froze instantly. The charming smile on Sorellen's face didn't falter, but I saw it in his eyes, a flicker of icy fury. If our parents hadn't been watching with matching expressions of relieved hope, I was certain the muscles in his jaw would have been twitching. I sauntered over to the sofa, my own smile plastered on my face, and sat down so close to him our thighs were touching. I fluttered my eyelashes for good measure. He responded by draping an arm around my shoulders in a gesture that looked possessively tender to our audience. To me, the pressure of his fingers digging into my shoulder was a clear, unspoken warning. You've made your point. Now stop. I leaned my head against his shoulder, nuzzling into the crook of his neck like a lovesick kitten, deliberately inhaling his scent. I felt him go rigid. The subtle tension in his body was a victory. So, I was despicable, was I? Well, he started it. Across from us, my parents exchanged a glance that screamed, Who is this person and what has he done with our son? Sorellen's mother, however, was a master of social grace. She let out a delicate cough and beamed at us. Ah, to be young and in love, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured warmth. Seeing you two so affectionate puts our minds at ease. My parents managed to produce a pair of stiff, unconvincing smiles. The conversation that followed was a blur of wedding logistics and polite, meaningless chatter. I rested against Sorellen, the initial thrill of annoying him giving way to a profound sense of exhaustion. The stress, the morning sickness, the sheer surreality of it all was catching up to me. My eyelids grew heavy, and before I knew it, I had drifted off to sleep right there on his shoulder. I woke up in my own bed. Sorellen was standing by the door, having just placed me down. I blinked, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice groggy. He didn't answer my question. Instead, a sarcastic edge laced his tone. "What happened to Sorellen, honey?" Oh, he was still holding on to that. A mischievous grin spread across my face. I propped myself up on my elbows. "You liked it, didn't you, honey? Don't worry, there's more where that came from. I could even start calling you hubby." How does that sound, hubby? The word hubby felt so utterly ridiculous coming from my mouth that I almost gagged. I watched him, expecting a sharp retort, a roll of the eyes, anything. Instead, he just stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before turning and walking out of the room without another word. I collapsed back onto the bed, a strange mix of triumph and emptiness churning in my gut. The wedding was a grand, rushed affair, a whirlwind of preparations that left me feeling like a passenger in my own life. The guest list was a veritable who's who of the city's elite, all there to witness the fated union of two powerful alpha families. The most galling part of the whole ceremony was that I was, for all intents and purposes, playing the role of the Omega. We were both in pristine white suits, but the symbolism was undeniable. I was the one being given away, the one standing on the traditionally receptive side of the altar. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I shot a resentful glare at Sorellen, who stood there looking infuriatingly serene and handsome. He honestly looked more like the beautiful, blushing bride than I did. But then, I was the one who was pregnant, the one who had lost our fight. I had no choice but to swallow my pride. Just you wait, Sorellen Thorn, I thought. This isn't over. The ceremony was a blur of stilted traditions and sentimental vows that made my skin crawl. When it came time for the rings, I acted on pure impulse. The moment the best man presented the velvet box, I snatched my ring out before Sorellen could move. He looked at me, surprised. "Give me your hand," I mumbled, feeling a strange heat rise to my cheeks. He hesitated for a second, then seemed to let out a faint, resigned sigh before extending his left hand. I slid the cool platinum band onto his finger. It was a small act of defiance, a way of reclaiming some semblance of control. I had no idea why it felt so important. When it was his turn to put the ring on my finger, I noticed something odd. The corner of his mouth was curved into a genuine, unforced smile. It wasn't the fake, polished smile for the cameras. He looked happy. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why, but seeing that smile somehow diffused my anger. Then came the kiss. The officiant declared us husbands, and I looked up at him, bracing myself for a perfunctory, passionless peck for the crowd. Instead, Sorellen framed my face with his hands, his touch surprisingly gentle, and kissed me. It wasn't a show. It was deep and searching, and in the midst of it, I felt something small and sweet dissolve on my tongue. When he pulled away, my head was spinning. He had slipped a piece of candy into my mouth. The taste was a shocking, invigorating burst of cool mint and tart blueberry, his pheromone scent. The flavor jolted my senses, clearing the fog from my brain. I stared at him, bewildered. He just smiled that soft, genuine smile again. "Just helping you stay awake," he whispered, his breath a cool caress. What kind of person uses candy flavored like their own pheromones to help someone stay awake? It was a blatant violation of unspoken alpha etiquette. It was a power move, a deliberate act of seduction. And damn him, it was working. I found myself wishing the candy wouldn't dissolve so quickly, wanting the taste of him to linger. But it was only half a piece. Too soon, the flavor faded, leaving me wanting more. The reception was an endless parade of handshakes and well wishes. Sorellen navigated the crowd with practiced ease, his words perfectly measured, his demeanor calm and charming. He was the picture of a mature, gentle man, and watching him, I felt a reluctant sense of security. This person, who kept everyone at arm's length, whose true thoughts were a fortress no one could breach, was now my husband. He was an enigma, a beautiful, dangerous fire that people couldn't help but be drawn to, even knowing they would be burned. And I was the moth who had flown right into the flame. By the time we finally escaped and returned to the new house our families had bought for us, I was beyond exhausted. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the massive bed in the master suite, every muscle in my body sighing with relief. But as the minutes ticked by, a sense of unease crept in. A hollow, lonely feeling. Starting today, I was supposed to be living with Sorellen Thorn. But he hadn't even followed me into the bedroom. A few minutes later, I heard his footsteps in the hall, and then saw him walk past our door, a pillow and blanket tucked under his arm, heading for the guest room. My blood boiled. Seriously? Our first night as a married couple, and he was already sleeping in a separate room? I didn't care how much he despised me. This was just cruel. What was the point of that kiss, of that damn candy, if he was just going to do this? The memory of the sweet, cool flavor of his pheromones came flooding back, more vivid than before. I was starting to crave it. To crave him. The thought was horrifying. According to alpha biology, I should be repulsed by the scent of another alpha. It should trigger feelings of aggression, annoyance, even disgust. But here I was, inexplicably, obsessively, wanting to smell it again. It was infuriating. I tossed and turned, sleep completely out of reach. Finally, I decided that if I was going to be miserable, I wasn't going to be miserable alone. He hated me. Fine. I was going to make his life a living hell. I grabbed my own pillow and marched to the guest room, knocking sharply on the door. The door opened, and Sir Ellen stood there, already changed into a pair of soft grey pajama pants, his chest bare. He stared at me, then at the pillow clutched in my arms, a flicker of genuine surprise in his eyes. His gaze swept down my body and back up, a slow, appraising look that made my skin prickle. A sardonic smirk touched his lips. Planning on running away from home, Nolan, he drawled. I was already on edge, and his flippant remark grated on my last nerve. I ignored him, pushed past him into the room, and made a beeline for the bed, diving under the covers. The sheets still held his residual warmth, and his scent, mint and blueberry, was a subtle, comforting presence in the fabric. I buried my face in the pillow he had just been using. It was bliss. A real man's scent. This was perfect. Sir Ellen stood by the door, a look of exasperated amusement on his face. Are you insane? It's the middle of summer. He leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his chest, that smirk widening. Or is it that you love me so much you can't bear to be apart from me for even a moment? Had to come seeking the warmth of my embrace. His tone was deliberately teasing, that deep voice laced with a playful arrogance that I despised. But we were married now. I was carrying his child. There was no way I was going to let him have the upper hand. I sat up, propping myself on my elbows and flashing him my sweetest, most cloying smile. You're right. I love you so much that the second you left, I was overcome with a soul-crushing loneliness. I couldn't possibly sleep without you. So, what are you going to do about it? Sir Ellen's smirk faltered. He hadn't expected me to agree with him so readily. He just stared, a slight frown creasing his brow. What? I patted the empty space on the bed beside me, my voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. So, hubby, come over here and hold me while I sleep. After all, I added, my voice turning deceptively gentle, if I don't get a good night's rest, it can't be good for the baby, can it? I deliberately emphasized the word hubby, making it sound as obnoxious as possible. The effect was immediate. I watched as a series of emotions warred across Sir Ellen's face, annoyance, frustration, disbelief, before finally settling into a mask of dark resignation. He slammed the door shut and walked towards the bed like a man condemned. I'm at my wit's end with you, he sighed, the words a quiet admission of defeat. Like I said before, meeting you was 8 lifetimes of bad luck. I lay back down, a triumphant grin on my face. You flatter me. He slid into bed beside me and reached over to turn off the lamp. As his arm moved, I shot my hand out and stopped him. What now? He asked, his voice weary. In one swift motion, I reached up and peeled the pheromone-suppressing patch from the side of his neck. The effect was instantaneous. His raw alpha scent flooded the room, a potent, intoxicating wave of cool mint and sharp blueberry that made my head swim. Sir Ellen flinched, his body tensing. What the hell are you doing? I pressed closer to him, my nose just inches from his scent gland. Nothing, I purred, just playing. I took a deep, shameless inhale, the scent hitting the back of my throat like a shot of ice-cold liquor. I knew the action was borderline perverse, but he was my husband. I was allowed to be a little weird, right? After the initial dizzying rush, the scent began to have a calming effect, soothing my frayed nerves. It was like my instincts and my rational mind were at war, and I was addicted to the conflict. I mumbled against his skin. It's all your fault. You've turned me into some kind of freak who's addicted to an alpha scent. I felt his body go completely still. His breathing, which had been slow and steady, hitched. He tried to sit up, to pull away. I grabbed his arm, my voice a low whisper. Where are you going? In the soft golden light from the hallway, I could see a faint blush creeping up his neck and dusting the tips of his ears. He gritted his teeth, his voice a low, strained growl. Nolan, for God's sake. I'm a man. What do you think you're doing to me? It took me a second to understand. When I did, my own face flushed hot. Oh, He was still trying to get out of bed. I pulled him back again. He turned, his eyes dark with a mixture of desire and frustration. What is your game? I can help with that, I whispered, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. My behavior tonight had been audacious, to say the least. Maybe this could be my way of making up for it. Before he could protest, I pulled him down, our bodies colliding on the narrow bed. Later, wrapped tightly in his arms, the heat from his body seeping into mine, I drifted in a hazy state between waking and sleep. The guest room bed was much smaller than the one in the master suite, but it was just right for 2 people. It was cramped, but it was warm. Better than that vast, cold expanse of the other bed. Here, we were forced together. There was no room to pull away. As I drifted off, I tightened my hold on him, a feeling of profound, unexpected peace settling over me. The next morning, Sorellen was gone when I woke up. I slept until noon, the pregnancy making me perpetually drowsy. I dragged myself out of bed and was scrolling through my phone while eating a piece of toast when a message popped up from my old college friends. They were organizing a get-together. The news of my sudden marriage to Sorellen Thorne had apparently set our entire social circle ablaze, and they were dying for the details. It had been a while since I'd seen them. I got dressed and headed out. I walked into the private room at the bar to a chorus of cheers and a barrage of questions. Hayes, what the hell? When did you manage to conquer the great Sorellen Thorne? I leaned back against the plush sofa, trying to sound casual. It was nothing. Just helped him out once. My friend Leo snorted. Helped him out once and suddenly you're in love. I felt a pang of unease. I wasn't sure. I didn't know if Sorellen felt anything beyond a sense of duty because of the baby. It's complicated, I hedged. Leo leaned in, his eyes gleaming with gossip. You can't be in a relationship with no feelings. Come on, spill. It's because of the baby, I mumbled, the words barely audible over the music. The table went silent. Every eye was on me. Then, my friend Sam, who had been quietly nursing a beer, shouted, You 2 have a kid already. I buried my face in my hands. Could you be any louder? Dude, you're a legend. Sam continued, completely oblivious to my mortification. I've never heard of an alpha getting another alpha pregnant. You have my utmost respect. It's me, I muttered into my palms. I'm the one who's pregnant. The friend next to me, who had just taken a large gulp of his drink, sprayed it all over the table. The room erupted in a mix of shocked silence and then uproarious laughter as they all turned to mock me. I just closed my eyes and wished the floor would swallow me whole. My friend, Leo, ever the diplomat, seemed to sense my growing discomfort beneath the relentless teasing. He let out a loud, forced laugh to cut through the noise. Honestly, Nolan, I'm not that surprised, he said, trying to steer the conversation into safer waters. I always figured you'd be the one on top. Exactly, another friend chimed in. Aesthetically speaking, Thorne has always been delicate, almost too pretty to be an alpha. That pale skin, the sharp cheekbones. His words triggered a vivid image in my mind. Sorellen, asleep, his face in repose. The cold, aristocratic mask would fall away, revealing an almost ethereal beauty. But it was a deceptive beauty. It was the serene surface of a frozen lake, hiding dangerous depths below. And that mole, that damned mole by his lips, was an irresistible lure. I found myself lost in the memory, a slow smile spreading across my face without my realizing it. Nolan, you with us. Leo's voice snapped me back to reality. I blinked, a faint blush creeping up my neck. I cleared my throat and leaned back, trying to project an air of nonchalant confidence. What do you guys know? I said, my voice a little too loud. That's what a real man is. Who cares if it's beautiful? Someone has to cherish it. So what if I'm not on top? So what if I'm the one who's pregnant? It's my child. I took a steadying breath, the words suddenly feeling true as I said them. Honestly, even if Sir Ellen tried to push me away, I don't think I could let him go. And it's not just because he's handsome. Once you fall for a high-maintenance, aristocratic princess like him, what can you do? You just have to spoil him. My friend stared at me for a moment, stunned into silence, before Leo raised his glass. You're a braver man than any of us, Nolan. I didn't reply. How could I admit the real reason? That the truth was, I couldn't beat him. That my grand seduction had backfired spectacularly. We stayed for hours, catching up on old times. Most of them were settled now, with stable jobs and families. Life had moved on. The bar was loud, the music thumping, and amidst the shouting and laughter, I didn't notice my phone vibrating in my pocket. I'd silenced it earlier to avoid being disturbed. When I finally checked it, my heart plummeted. Dozens of missed calls from Sir Ellen. A string of increasingly frantic texts. Shit. I made my excuses and bolted, hailing a cab and rushing home. The house was dark when I walked in. For a moment, I thought it was empty. Then I switched on the light, and my heart nearly leaped out of my chest. Sir Ellen was sitting on the sofa in the pitch-black living room, a silent, imposing figure. His eyes were fixed on the doorway, and I knew he'd been watching it, waiting. The look in them was cold and sharp, a gaze that seemed to pierce right through me, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My first instinct was defiance. I haven't done anything wrong. I just went out with some friends. I forced a casual smile, walked over, and sat down beside him, reaching out to touch his arm. Hubby, why are you sitting in the dark? He flinched away from my touch. His voice was dangerously quiet. You still know I'm your husband? You don't answer your phone. You don't reply to a single text. Not one. You're good, Nolan. Really good. I was starting to think you'd forgotten you even had a home to come back to. He was angry, royally pissed. I pouted, trying my best to look innocent. The bar was too loud. I didn't hear it ringing. I really didn't mean to ignore you. He turned to face me, a humorless, self-deprecating smile on his lips. You don't even know what you did wrong, do you? You're pregnant, and you're running all over the city without telling anyone. If something had happened to you, do you have any idea how worried I would be? You have absolutely no concept of family. What am I to you, really? Just someone to mess with? You do whatever you want, whenever you want. Have you ever, for 1 second, considered the person beside you? His barrage of questions left me reeling. I felt a surge of indignation. I'd just been defending him to my friends, and this was what I came home to? Still, I knew he was right. I was the pregnant one. I should be the one being pampered and coddled. His anger made my own temper flare, but I held it back, muttering petulantly, how am I only thinking of myself? We were sitting so close, he definitely heard me. His voice turned bitter. I don't disbelieve you, Nolan Hayes. I just can't bring myself to believe that you are truly serious about us. You're still the same reckless person you've always been. Even your apologies lack sincerity. If I were on my deathbed, would you still be this careless? That was it. The final straw. My own stubborn pride ignited. Are you done? I snapped. Are you the only one who gets to be hurt? I already said I was sorry. What more do you want? You ask what you are to me. Fine, let me ask you the same thing. Why did you marry me? Don't you dare tell me it wasn't because of this baby. How noble are you, Sir Ellen? Without waiting for his reaction, I stormed out of the living room and up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door behind me. Fine. Who wanted to share a bed with that infuriating tyrant anyway? Lying in the cold, empty bed, my anger slowly began to cool, replaced by a gnawing unease. In the heat of the moment, I had challenged him. But maybe it was a question that needed to be asked. If he was really only with me because of the baby, then I didn't need to be entangled with this beautiful, poisonous man any longer than necessary. I expected us to fall back into our old pattern, a cold war of icy silence that would last for days. It was always how our fights ended. But as I lay there, tossing and turning, I heard the faint sound of footsteps in the hallway, approaching our room. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly feigned sleep, my back to the door. The door creaked open. He walked in and stood by the bed. I heard him let out a long, weary sigh. "Nolan Hayes," he whispered. "Are you really asleep?" I stayed silent but shifted slightly, making a small sound to let him know I was there. "I was wrong, too," he said, his voice softer now. "I shouldn't have spoken to you so harshly. Don't be angry with me anymore, okay?" He was apologizing, yielding. The man who was always so proud, so unbending, was backing down. For me. I was so startled that I shot up in bed. "Ha!" Seeing my over-the-top reaction, Sorellen looked a bit embarrassed, turning his face away. I pressed him. What did you just say?" He turned back, his expression patient, his voice gentle. "I said I shouldn't have been so aggressive. I should have been more careful and asked you about your day. Please don't be angry with me anymore. You're pregnant. It's not good for you to be upset." "Ah," I said, my heart sinking. "So it's because of the baby." I flopped back onto the bed in a huff. How hard it must be for you to lower yourself for the sake of your child. I deliberately emphasized the last few words. Sorellen just sighed again, then climbed onto the bed and wrapped his arms around me from behind. He pulled me against his chest, his warm breath tickling my neck. My whole body went flushed and hot. His voice was a low rumble against my back. "It's not just because of the child." My heart began to pound, a wild, frantic rhythm against my ribs, so loud I was sure he could feel it. My mind went blank. He had explained himself, this infuriatingly handsome actor, but for some reason, I didn't want to continue the act of being angry anymore. If it's not because of the child, then what is it? My own voice sounded choked. "You need to be clear. Otherwise, this marriage won't last. I have no intention of living my whole life with someone who's only with me out of a sense of responsibility." Sorellen chuckled softly, a warm, genuine sound. He gently squeezed my hand. "That's why I married you. Because I like you, Nolan. I want to keep this baby because it's our baby. The one you are carrying. You question me, you worry, all because you value this relationship. Don't you see? From the very beginning, you've made me the center of your world. Because you already liked me. Is that clear enough for you? I have liked you for a very, very long time." The world seemed to fall away, leaving only the sound of my own frantic heartbeat as the soundtrack to his confession. I had never known how to ask for affection, how to beg for a place in someone's heart. And yet, here it was, offered so freely it felt like a dream. A bitter, teasing retort rose to my lips. "You have a sweet way of showing it. All those times you made me feel like an idiot, letting me chase you. You made me swallow my pride again and again. Was it some kind of power trip? Did you need to see me completely humbled before you were satisfied?" Sorellen didn't deny it. Instead, he laughed, a deep, uninhibited sound of pure amusement. He gently pinched my nose, a gesture that should have been annoying but felt strangely intimate. "There you are," he murmured. "My arrogant Nolan. But you forget, my pride is just as big as yours. When two people like us clash, someone is bound to get hurt. You say you were wronged. Fine. I accept the blame. From now on, whenever you feel wronged, you can blame me. Is that a deal?" I pouted. "This isn't about being right or wrong." "Sure," he interrupted softly. "No more words. I understand. You like me, and I like you. This is what compromise feels like, isn't it?" He saw right through me. He knew me down to my stubborn, prideful core. Even after hearing everything I wanted to hear, I still felt a little sulky. I jabbed him in the ribs with my elbow, making him grunt in surprise. "So what was all that before?" I demanded. "All that cold indifference. Were you deliberately playing hard to get, making me beg for it?" He had the decency to look slightly abashed. "Marriage is a lifetime commitment," he said, his voice serious. "After marrying you, I decided I had to be responsible for all aspects of our life together. That includes your emotional well-being." I was rendered speechless. We lay there, tangled together in the quiet darkness, until a gentle wave of sleep finally washed over me. It was the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. After that night, the dynamic between us underwent a seismic shift. I couldn't quite describe it, but the sharp, sarcastic edge he always directed at me vanished. Instead, he turned that biting wit on himself, making self-deprecating jokes that left me stunned. Sometimes, when I'd throw a playful insult his way, he'd just let it slide. There was, however, one immovable boundary. Whenever I'd tease, "Just wait until this baby is born, I'm going to pin you down so hard," he would immediately get a stern look on his face and say, "That is not happening." I finally understood. You couldn't treat Sir Ellen Thorne with conventional kindness. The more you indulged him, the more he pushed. But I was no pushover. So we settled into a strange kind of harmony, a balance of mutual compromise, just as he'd said. And I let myself enjoy it. Being pregnant was not easy, but Sir Ellen's care was meticulous and unwavering. He was there the moment I opened my eyes, asking, "Let me help you up." He bought all the clothes, prepared all the supplies. I opted for a C-section, and though I was prepared, in the days leading up to the delivery, he was a nervous wreck, checking and rechecking the hospital bags until I burst out laughing. "There's nothing more you can do," I told him. "Just stand by my side and try to help me suffer less." "That's the plan," he said, his expression deadly serious. "I'm offering up my good faith to the heavens." I snorted. "I'm a man of science, Sir Ellen. I don't believe in that stuff." He shook his head, a small, earnest smile on his face. "I don't believe in anything anymore. Except you." Perhaps his heartfelt plea worked, because the birth went smoothly. We had a daughter, a little beater who was more precious than I could have ever imagined. We hadn't known the gender, so we'd bought clothes in every color of the rainbow. The nursery was a chaotic explosion of pastels. As I lay recovering, I whispered to him, "You know, I had a feeling it would be a girl." Sir Ellen, who had previously mocked my superstitious feelings, was now silent. Seeing him speechless was a rare and beautiful victory. I couldn't resist teasing him. "Who's superstitious now? My intuition was spot on, wasn't it?" He crossed his arms, wrinkling his nose as he looked at our daughter sleeping in the bassinet beside me. "Beautiful. She looks like a hairy little monkey." I was speechless. Then I looked closer. He wasn't entirely wrong. "All newborns look like that," I said defensively. "She'll grow into her looks. Besides, she has the best features from both of us. Don't you have faith in your own genes?" He just grunted. She took my last name, but Sir Ellen chose her first, Serafina. I initially complained it was too fancy, too dramatic for such a tiny person. "What's wrong with it?" he'd argued, completely serious. "It's meaningful. Her two fathers are stubborn, reckless fools who speak without thinking. She needs a name that reminds her to be thoughtful and eloquent." I had no counter-argument. The more I said it, the more I liked the name. Serafina Hayes. It had a nice ring to it. Watching Sir Ellen now, carefully cradling our daughter, his movements so gentle as he rocked her to sleep, a profound sense of peace washed over me. What more could a man ask for? Finding him, falling in love with him, none of it was wrong. Yes, he was an alpha. By all conventional logic, he and I, another alpha, should never have been together. But I believe our love transcends the arbitrary boundaries of our biology. It is a pure connection of souls. Love shouldn't be bound by gender, nor should we sacrifice a true, earth-shattering connection for the sake of convention. Our story was never supposed to happen. But it did. And it was perfect.